These days, it can be hard to trust the media. What's true, what's fake, and who is behind the message? I'm a freelance journalist and videographer who has spent years studying the media. Now I'm taking a look at what local, regional, and national news stories mean to us here in North Central Washington. I'm Dominick Bonny, and this is Common Sense. Hello and welcome to Common Sense. I'm Dominick Bonny, and in this episode, we're going to learn about Rock Steady Boxing, which is a program designed for those battling Parkinson's disease to fight back against the effects of this pernicious illness and reclaim their ability to control their own bodies through strength training and dynamic exercises that test the mind and body. It's a program headed up by an extraordinary woman named Paula Lamana at the Wenatchee Racquet and Athletic Club. Last week, I dropped in on one of her classes to see these inspiring active seniors getting down on the punching bags, agility ladders, and battling ropes. Then I interviewed Paula about the program and the benefits this type of training has for folks battling Parkinson's. We'll get to that segment in a moment, but first, I'd like to follow up on a few other stories I've been keeping my eye on. The events taking place on the CHELAN County Planning Commission and in the Community Development Department have been interesting, and I'll give you an update on that later. But let's start with Ernie's Market in Wenatchee, where a store clerk in late December refused service to Dr. Peter Rutherford, the CEO of Confluence Health. Now, I wasn't going to mention the name of the business and just focus on the situation, but then I came across this video of the clerk bragging about it.
So I'm working today here at Ernie's, and guess who came in? Probably the one person that you want to punch in the face. And it was my pleasure to refuse service to him. Mr. Rutherford came in and I refused service to him. I told him he can move on to the Superjet, and he's asked me why. I said, well, because hundreds of nurses have lost their job because of you.
Probably the one person you want to punch in the face? Yikes. Now, I understand why some folks are upset about these nurses who chose to resign rather than get the COVID vaccine, but first of all, that was their choice. They weren't fired. They refused to comply with a perfectly reasonable mandate for healthcare workers. If people who work in healthcare are able to refuse vaccinations for diseases that put some of the most vulnerable people in our community at higher risk for getting while seeking care, what are we doing here? I'm talking about elderly people, cancer patients, and sick kids. Who wants a nurse that's going to give you a disease? Not me. Secondly, people need to stop talking about doing violence to people you disagree with. If you don't like the policies at Confluence Health, that's fine, but saying people in this community should want to punch Dr. Rutherford in the face is beyond the pale. And before you dismiss my point here, I think it's important to drive home the fact that words matter. And not only has Dr. Rutherford been refused service at Ernie's Market, but the Rutherfords have also received death threats. This is unacceptable. The fact that we as a community are allowing Dr. Rutherford to be treated in this way is an indictment of all of us because we're allowing it. How? By not speaking out and pushing back against this type of behavior when we see it. It allows it to continue. This Ernie's employee was emboldened enough to make a video shamelessly bragging about her actions and post it to Facebook. So clearly, there are some in this community who think behaving in this manner is fine and dandy. I reached out to Ernie's via email and asked if this clerk was reprimanded or terminated, or if she is speaking on behalf of the business. I asked the management if the owner would like to issue an apology to Dr. Rutherford. As of this time of filming on Friday, December 31st, I have not heard back, but if I do, I'll include that response in a future episode. The last thing I'll say about this issue is that Dr. Rutherford has stayed on as CEO of Confluence Health, even though he was set to retire this year. He deserves to retire. The fact that he's staying on as head of the largest medical provider in our region during what is inarguably one of the most stressful times many of us have ever lived through, and the fact that he's taking this kind of abuse while doing so is a testament to his character and selflessness. Dr. Rutherford deserves our respect and thanks for playing a large role in helping our entire North Central Washington community from Wenatchee to Omak weather this storm and keep casualty rates relatively low. And let me put things in perspective when it comes to casualty rates, because America is number one, but not in a good way. We're leading the world in COVID deaths with 823,000 deaths to date. We have an infection rate of about 100 per 1,000 Americans. When any disease is infecting 100 people out of every 1,000, that's really bad. The other nations on the list of countries hardest hit by COVID-19 are Brazil with more than 600,000 deaths, India with nearly 500,000, Russia with just over 300,000, Mexico and Peru with about 500,000 COVID deaths between them. It's important to take a look at the numbers and remember that each of those numbers represents a life, a person. Joseph Stalin famously said, "The death of one man is a tragedy. The death of millions is a statistic." And it seems like there are many in this country who would agree with him. Some people want to act like COVID is no big deal and spread misinformation, downplaying its impact, telling people that if you are healthy or if you drink hot lemon water or ingest livestock dewormer, you don't need a vaccine. The whole vaccine issue has become so political and divisive, we have store clerks kicking doctors out of markets right here in our community. But before we move on, I would like to highlight and compliment a man who I have frequently criticized on this show, Donald Trump. Recently, in an onstage interview with disgraced broadcaster Bill O'Reilly in front of a live audience, he spoke out in favor of getting vaccinated against COVID-19 and getting the booster. Let's take a look at that clip.
Done is historic. Don't let them take it away. Don't take it away from ourselves. You're playing right into their hands when you sort of like, oh, the vaccine. If you don't want to take it, you shouldn't be forced to take it. No mandates, but take credit because we saved tens of millions of lives. Take credit. Don't let them take that away from you.
Okay, so the president made news.
Do you agree with that? Okay.
Both the president and I are vaxxed, and did you get the booster?
Yes.
I got it too. Okay, so
Don't.
When I saw that, I thought to myself, Dr. Frankenstein, meet your monster. It's proof that even Donald Trump, the man who helped turn public opinion against common sense mitigation efforts like masking and social distancing and gave credence to the anti-vax movement from day one, cannot sell some of his people on the idea of getting a vaccine he himself has taken. It's proof that Trump was never the creator of the nationalist populism he used to become president. He merely capitalized on something that was already there. And now that he's not playing the character he himself helped create, the movement might just move on without him. If Trump keeps this up, one of the big questions in 2022 could be, what happens to the mob when they stop listening to the leader? And speaking of mobs, this week marks the one-year anniversary of the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, in which a mob of violent Trump supporters and right-wing extremists tried to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. It's the first time in American history something like it has happened, and for those of us who can see this issue without partisan bias, it was a dark day in American history. I'm not going to spend too long on this issue in this episode, but I do want to mention this unprecedented attack on our democracy on the one-year anniversary of it. The right-wing media machine has been hard at work trying to spin it as anything but what it was. But to those of us who watched it with our own eyes, those of us capable of knowing when con men are trying to play us, we are not fooled. A deeper look at the insurrection will have to wait for a future episode, though. For now, let's go to the rack and meet the human dynamo that is Paula Lamana and learn how she's helping Parkinson's patients fight back. So, rock steady boxing.
For Parkinson's.
What's the goal?
The goal is to extend their quality of life longer because one of the big problems with Parkinson's is it does deteriorate your autonomic function. So just how we walk and we get out of bed and we do all the things, one of the problems is they don't get to do that anymore. They have to think about it. They have to think about walking, swinging their arms. They have to think about swallowing, talking loud because they lose their vocal cords, grabbing things, stepping laterally. Their body shuts those movements off. And so we work at keeping those things going by creating secondary neural pathways. Like when we're boxing, when we're doing this kind of stuff and I'm having them kick, that's forced balance. You're working on balance and stabilizers in the hips, knees, and ankles. But what they're knowing is they're boxing and they kind of do a quick little kick and then boxing, and then they alternate what they're doing. They're creating secondary neural pathways for these movements that are forcing balance and then forcing out of body, out of center punches.
I see. Very cool.
And it helps them from going like this because that's what Parkinson's does.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I noticed that you were saying stand up
all the time.
The posture thing.
Because
yeah.
if you watch, they'll start to do this, and you're like, got it back.
Yeah.
Bring
wow.
it up.
Huh. And how long have you, what made you want to do this?
So, that's a funny story. So Rich Pratt, my buddy Rich Pratt, owned this prior to me owning it. And he was always like, you need to come check out what we do. You gotta check out what we do. And I had foster kids and we were so busy. And at one point we had 5 foster kids, one being a tiny baby, and I was overwhelmed. And I just kept saying no. And one day I saw him and I was like, okay, let's go. I'll go today. Yeah. And I walked in and I watched. We had a huge crew. We had 24 people at that point. It was pre-COVID. And I walked in and I saw them not just boxing and exercising. I see them fighting for their posture, fighting for their movement, fighting to stay alive because they have grandkids and all of these things. And I just started crying because it's not something you see every day. You don't see people come in and like, you see them just get buff and tough. Yeah. You don't see them come in and like struggle to stand and like bring it back up and keep going and keep going and keep going. And so he goes, don't you dare cry in front of my fighters. So he sent me to the back and got myself together, and I came back and I'm like, I'm all in. Yeah. I've never seen people fight like this, and I've worked with all kinds of hip, knee replacements, all the things. But to see people fight for their life, to know that this is the only thing scientifically evidence-based, mm-hmm. to keep them in motion for life, for a better quality of life. So that's how I got into it.
Wow, very cool. And how long have you been doing this?
I was volunteering for about over a year before I took it over and got certified. At first I had to get certified and then kept working with him even through the certification, just because he wanted to make sure he was handing off to a very capable person who understands all facets, from wheelchair fitness all the way to you can't tell they have Parkinson's fitness. So, and then he moved with the love of his life, and I got to run the best business in America. That's awesome. I get to help people every day.
Yeah. So. And is this a model that other communities have as well?
Oh yeah, Rocksteady is worldwide actually now. It's a worldwide affiliate. We're still trying to figure out if we're going to keep the name, because I want to add more Pilates style work for trunk stability. And so I keep adding my own things from my therapeutic exercise background into it. So it's technically not 100% Rocksteady style. Mm-hmm. So I make it unique.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
But still stability through the trunk and hips and everything.
Sure. And you mentioned that there are different levels of Parkinson's, and you have different classes. So who were you working with today? What level?
2 3s.
Okay.
2 3s.
I see.
And level 1s usually, you can't tell if you didn't know they had Parkinson's, you just think they were moving a little slower today because their muscles were sore or something. It's hard to tell if they have it. In fact, there's very few moments you'll catch a little footstep and you're like, oh, there it is. But you can't tell all the way. And then the 2 3s, they're in the middle of like, you can tell that they have it. The movement is slowed down a little bit. There's a little more focus on balance work in that class. And of course, lots of core and strength. But yeah, those are, and then level 4s are mostly wheelchair bound, and sometimes I go to them. If it's easier, if they're in a home, I can go to them, or if they have a family that can't travel all the time, I'm willing to go to them too, so we kind of work through it.
Wow. And how many students, I guess, clients do you work with?
Well, right now we're up to 19, which is awesome. Like I said, we were way up in the 20s prior to COVID, and so we're just working on bringing the program bigger and at a different level, because some people see boxing and they're like, I'm not boxing, it's not my jam. And a lot of my fighters were like, I don't want to box.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait till you try it.
Yeah.
It's not about hitting somebody or something. It's about the motion, the hip transfer, like all of this. There's more to it than just boxing.
Sure.
So.
And that hand-eye coordination is probably a huge component too.
Yeah.
I saw you working with the paddles. Yeah.
Yep. Focus mitts. Yeah. They really they do so good. Yeah. And it's funny, if you let them do it by themselves, they kind of just. But when you just bring the focus mitts out, they're like, oh, it's game on. So it's a cool mental shift when you see that. And then we do things like we put them on an uneven surface like foam pads, and I do flashcards. because if they stop to answer the question, they're not doing two processes at once. So that shows me where we need to work. And so they'll be doing squats and flashcards. I'm holding up flashcards and like they have to answer it, but they have to keep doing squats. We do things like taking washers and stacking them on a stick, and you have a box or a ball in this hand. And so you're squeezing while you're stacking, but they want to stop to stack. And then and I'm like, nope, I stand right there. I'm like, nope, keep squeezing. They're like, oh, okay. I mean, that's hard for us. If you go home and try that, it's hard. It's hard. So yeah, those are the kind of things for the neural pathway building that we do.
Stay tuned for the rest of the interview with Paula Lamana after the break.
Ever wonder what it takes for wild birds to survive the longer, colder nights of winter? They can't just turn up the thermostat or throw on an extra blanket. Winter Super Blend from Wild Birds Unlimited provides a super boost of energy and fat, essential for winter survival. Stop by our store to learn how you can help the birds this season and how you can attract more beautiful birds to your yard. Wild Birds Unlimited. More birds, more joy.
My job is to educate my client, help them navigate a system that is difficult and complicated. It is my job to tell their story and to convince either a court, a judge, or 12 jurors of the appropriateness of our request. It's the great leveler. It's the only leveler, because the least powerful can gain the remedy they deserve that the law provides for them.
Sure glad we went to Les Schwab.
I'm glad the baby's still happy.
Well, I'm just glad that along with tires, Les Schwab also does brakes, alignment, and a bunch of other safety services. I mean, if we had gone to a cheap tire store instead, I'd be a doggone wreck.
My thoughts exactly.
Swing by today and get road trip ready with our always free pre-trip safety check. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952.
What is home? A place to gather, a place to grow, provide shelter for the ones we love, eat, drink, restore, build trust. It's a place to rest when the workday is done, a place to find quiet after a night of good fun. What an honor we have at Guild to help own, finance, create, pave the way to live in home.
Welcome back. Let's get right back to my interview with Paula Lamana about rock steady boxing and how it benefits those battling Parkinson's disease.
And we have word searches. There's tape on the wall over there where I do word searches and tape the pin there, and they have to box for a few minutes and then find the words.
Wow, very cool. And so this, like you said, is proven to kind of slow down the process of getting of it worsening the Parkinson's. And you said that one guy has had Parkinson's for 23 years?
27. 28 years now, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so...
You saw him.
Yeah, and part of...
He does this, though. And he's still a farmer, so
Wow.
he still does his farming, and he still does all the things at home.
Wow.
You know, he doesn't stop. It's when you stop that it can take over.
Yeah, that's important to note, I think, because, I mean, I don't know a lot about Parkinson's, but from what you see in media or what you understand of it, if you're just an outside observer, is that it's a very fast-moving, progressing
Can be.
But with this, that can slow that down.
Nobody knows Parkinson's until you have to know Parkinson's. That's when it comes to the front and center, is when it affects your family or somebody you love. And there are people, I have one who will probably never progress beyond a hand trimmer. And I have a few that have had it for a long time, and they're starting to show more signs. But it's weird, it's different. It's like a snowflake disease. Everybody is so different in their process and their progress but exercise is one evidence-based, and people get the diagnosis and they get scared and they go home. They go home and they sit because they're like, I have the, and then they read online, and that's the worst thing they can do. They read all this horrible stuff and they're like, I am going to die. And it's like, we all are, but we can help you remain strong through this. And that's all I want to do, is help people remain strong through their Parkinson's diagnosis.
Absolutely. And from what, your clients tell you, our medical community or people in the medical community advising them to, hey, go exercise, be active?
They are, actually. That is one thing they say. If you have Parkinson's 30 minutes a day, you don't get weekends, you're going 30 minutes. And I had one today tell me, he's like, I don't have to roll to get out of bed anymore. I can get out of bed. Wow. And I was like, I know, this is going to keep happening. This is so good, because that's what fills my heart with joy, is like, I get to help them in the process of becoming stronger. Sure. And that's just, it's kind of the best job in America.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
To help people.
And how can people, they have loved ones who have Parkinson's and they say, well, this is a great program. How do they get more information?
Just call the RAC. My phone number is also available. It's online also on rocksteadyboxing.com. Rocksteady Boxing Wenatchee has my number and everything, so they can call me directly or call the RAC. I work with all of it. I think it's fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how long have you been here at the RAC, and what's that partnership look like?
Since October. It's different. It's hard to go from owning your own business and being your own boss to merging, but I love it. The people are awesome. They're really helping, because I couldn't advertise and do taxes and buy all the things and keep the gym. Like, it was too much for just one person. And having that help has been so cool, because I get to just focus on the programs, focus on the workouts, get more education on balance and stability work. I'm getting Washington State certified for balance, so I'll be able to help even more in the community. So, and then exercise is medicine certification. So that just opens it up, so I get to help more people. And then the referrals can come in, because it does help. It really does help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, those are my questions. My last question is always, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think the public should know about this issue?
It's just, people don't really know that Parkinson's is out there if they don't know, and that we have an amazing program, and I can even work with their physical therapists. So if somebody has something that they need work on, I can reach out and we communicate and we connect and we talk, and we can help them from here in a different capacity. And so it's really neat, because I get the experience of knowing the physical therapist and working with them, and then I get to help my people on a different level. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for inviting me today and speaking with me.
Thank you for coming and seeing my program.
Yeah. Paula Lamana is one of the most passionate people in the Wenatchee Valley. She's passionate about serving others. Not only does she throw herself into working with her clients at Rocksteady, she and her husband are also foster parents. She's an amazing role model, and I'm glad that I got the opportunity to showcase her work with Parkinson's patients, who I also have to give props to. These folks might be seniors battling Parkinson's, but they were throwing down in that gym, giving it 100%. One guy was dribbling that speed bag better than I can, but that's not saying much. Thank you to the RAC, Paula, and that awesome group for having me last week. Before we go, I want to give an update about a few things that have been going on in the Chelan County government. In the last episode, I mentioned that County Planning Commissioner Ryan Kelso was in jeopardy of losing his position because of alleged conflicts of interest. He kept his seat after Chelan County Commissioners voted 2-1 in favor of him remaining on the Planning Commission board. The following week, Jim Brown, the director of the Community Development Department, the office that oversees the building permit process, resigned. In his letter, Brown wrote that a, quote, worsening relationship with one commissioner, end quote, was the main reason for him leaving. It's clearly a story that deserves more attention, so I reached out to Brown with a request for an interview or comment on the matter, and we'll revisit this story in a future episode. The commissioner that voted against Kelso keeping his seat on the Planning Commission was Kevin Overbay, who himself had some conflict of of interest issues recently. I covered that in the last episode, but basically Overbay was called out at a Rivercom board meeting by Wenatchee Mayor Frank Kuntz and to a lesser extent East Wenatchee Mayor Jerry Lee Crawford because the agency recently hired Overbay's daughter Michaela as its new financial officer. Overbay being the chairman of the board of elected officials who oversee Rivercom is problematic, according to Kuntz and Crawford. And Mayor Kuntz told the Wenatchee World that Overbay should resign from the board altogether. And that's what Commissioner Kevin Overbay did. It was a move that surprised me, frankly. And these are stories worth paying attention to because our county government and how it's managed are incredibly important to our daily lives. We need things like Rivercom to function well. Building codes might seem boring, but they're also incredibly important. And the people who have the power to write and change those rules impact all our lives. That is, if you've ever set foot in a building in CHELAN County. I'll keep my eye on these things in CHELAN County government, but for now, before we sign off, I want to say rest in peace to Betty White, who died last week, just shy of her 100th birthday. She was funny, stood up for her principles, and was always classy. One of my favorite stories about her that took place way back in 1954 was when she hosted and produced her own daily talk and variety show. It was called The Betty White Show, and it was on NBC. She had creative control over the series and hired a female director, which was progressive by itself. But it was after the show featured Arthur Duncan, an African-American performer, as a regular cast member that they faced criticism. The criticism increased when NBC expanded the show nationally. Stations in the South threatened to boycott unless Duncan was removed from the series. In response, White said, "I'm sorry, live with it," and gave Duncan more airtime. Initially, a ratings success, the show repeatedly changed time slots and suffered lower viewership. By the end of the year, NBC quietly canceled the series, doing the right thing even though it cost her her TV show. Farewell to the late, great Betty White. I'm Dominick Bonny. Join me next time for more Common Sense.
Are you a take charge kind of person? Consider a career as a health unit coordinator. You'll work to keep health facilities running efficiently by coordinating medical providers, patients, and departments. The Charter College Certificate in Health Unit Coordinator program can get you up to speed on basic patient care, health records management, health and safety procedures, and medical billing. And the 10-month online program includes a computer you keep. Get started at chartercollege.edu, where we work to get you to work.
Find ageless beauty at CHELAN Valley Skincare. Cindy offers the most up-to-date treatments for personalized skincare. If sagging skin or acne scars are some skin challenges for you, CHELAN Valley Skincare offers non-invasive, non-surgical skincare. With up-to-date technology for shorter treatment plans, you'll benefit from Cindy's expertise to help you accomplish your skincare goals. Please stop by their website for details on all their services. Call Cindy today for your free consultation.
GMC Sierra with hands-free driving offers the most advanced and luxurious pickup in its class. Yeah, it rocks.
Hi, I'm Chuck Dronan, Managing Member at Epledollin Retirement and Assisted Living. It's been a tough year for all of us, but especially for those working and living in senior care facilities. Over the course of these many difficult months, our staff at Epledollin has been vigilant in adhering to federal and state guidelines to protect and assure the safety of our residents and their caregivers. If you're in need of assisted living for a loved one, give us a call at Epledollin. We're here for you.
Hello, my name is Brian Brett, the Fire Chief for CHELAN County Fire District 1, and I just wanted to talk about how amazing our Rivercom team is. They are intentional, purposeful, and skillful in everything they do, and they are the best at what they do. How they prepare, how they handle the caller, how they coordinate the emergency services, and how they push themselves to be the best. This is the kind of spirit that our Rivercom telecommunicators have. Our community needs you, We need you. We admire you. You're our lifeline.
Connect with us on Networked as we introduce you to the people and organizations who are leading innovation in the region. Get inspired, engaged, and networked right here on the NCWLIFE channel.